Today's lesson is on the types fast method for analyzing a poem. Types fast, spelled TPS-FAST-T, is an acronym for the steps of analysis which we can use to evaluate a poem or even lyrics to a song. The acronym calls us to first evaluate the title before reading the poem all the way through. Then, we must paraphrase the literal action within the poem. Then, we must determine the speaker, as it may not be the poet herself or himself. Then, look for and note any uses of figurative language, such as metaphors, similes, imagery, rhyme scheme, or other sound devices. After that, evaluate the attitude or tone within the poem, and the tone of the speaker, as these two different attitudes may be different. Next, note any shifts within the poem or places where the action, tone, or rhythm of the poem may change. Then return back and examine the title, with consideration now for all of the evaluation we have just done on the poem. Finally, contemplate or formulate ideas about certain themes within the work and how they are presented by the speaker and the poet. Now let's try an example. I have chosen a short poem by a well-known rap artist, Tupac Shakur, to practice examining and questioning through the types fast method. The poem is entitled "The Rose That Grew from Concrete." As you remember, the first step to types fast is examining the title independently. Before we begin the poem, what are your thoughts on the title? Does it evoke any images? How could we compare and contrast the connotations of a rose in concrete? Next, let's read through the whole poem. The rose that grew from concrete. Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete? Proving nature's law is wrong, it learned to walk without having feet. Funny it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from concrete, when no one else ever cared. Now, using the types fast method, how would you summarize the literal action within the poem? What is the poet physically describing? This step of paraphrasing asks you to avoid reading too much into the poem and simply focusing your attention on the basic action. Next, try to determine who the speaker is. Is it Tupac himself in the flesh, or could it be a third, unidentified person? How do you know it's not the rose itself talking? Now we will look at the figurative language used. For example, notice the rhyme scheme of A, B, C, B in the first 4 lines, or the metaphorical breathing and dreaming of the rose in lines 5 and 6. How do these function in the poem? Next, consider the attitude of the speaker. How is the attitude conveyed to the reader? For example, what kind of tone do you get from the last line? And what can you infer when it says, "Long live the rose that grew from concrete when no one else ever cared"? Now try to find any shifts within the poem, which might be hard to find since the poem is short. But pay attention to punctuation and places where the attitude might have changed. For example, did you notice the shift from the first 2 lines, which is a question, to then an answer or explanation in the following 2 lines? Why is this important to note? After that, return to the title. Has your interpretation or understanding of the rose in comparison to the concrete changed? Have you picked up on the metaphor of the poem? And does the title help you flesh out that metaphor? Finally, what is the theme of the poem as a whole? Does the figurative language and imagery of a flower fighting through the concrete help to convey any themes of, say, overcoming struggle or oppression? What are your final thoughts? You have just completed an introduction to the types fast method of poetry analysis. Hopefully you will find it helpful as you move on and explore new avenues of written work.